Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We are here with Imani Missouri. Imani Missouri, she's our guest today, and I'm very excited for this episode. I think we're gonna have a blessing. We're gonna have a great episode where Imani Missouri gonna talk about her background, her upbringing, and her career.
Welcome to the Divine Purpose Podcast, where we transport you along one of the more dynamic journeys of life. Have you ever been curious to know what it takes to become a successful leader? Or about knowing the secrets of life through the Bible? How about engaging in conversation where no topics are off limits? We will take you to new levels with guests who can help you grasp the importance of your calling. Now, here's your host, Eddy Dacius, founder of Dacius Facilities Management.
So, without further ado, let's introduce Imani Missouri.
Thank you, Eddy, so much for inviting me to be a part of the show and to join you for the podcast.
Oh, we appreciate you coming in. Like I said, we're excited to have you today. So, and like if you follow our podcast, we already like to ask, what can you tell us about you?
Yes. Let's see. Because we have quite the time with each other, right? So,
Yes.
as Eddy said, my name is Imani Missouri. My clients lovingly call me Coach Faith because Imani actually means faith in Swahili.
Wow.
I am a personal development and executive coach. I am also the principal owner of Faith Forward, LLC, where we provide faith increasing coaching and consulting services to social impact organizations and
Wow.
leaders in the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion, leadership development, community engagement, and the like.
Ooh, wow. You're a busy woman.
I am. And then, oh, yes, thank you for saying I'm busy. And in addition to that, also the founding program director for Faith Prejudice, which is a nonprofit organization that actually recently launched. And we are building bridges to racial equity through the heart of the church to address systemic racism.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you telling us that, and appreciate you. I think it's you're embracing your calling.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because a lot of people, we are meant to be somebody in our life where we're gonna be projected to what we like and what make us to embrace our calling. So, talking about different things you're doing. So, what are the three most challenging event in your life?
Hmm. I would say, like, to the point that you mentioned, Eddy, about embracing the calling, right?
Yeah.
That definitely takes time. It comes at different points in one's life.
Yes.
When I think about a difficult challenge, the first one that comes to mind is actually when I was graduating from undergrad.
Yep.
It was a couple of months before actually 1 month before I graduated. I lost someone that was close to me, who was murdered actually before
Wow.
we both were going to graduate. And I took that very, very hard. And then within a month of my graduation, my maternal grandmother passed away suddenly.
Yeah.
And for
Sorry to-
context, my maternal grandmother actually helped raise me. So it was just like back to back. And it happened during the recession, right? So
Yep.
it was pretty tough in terms of one, like dealing with that grief, but then also trying to find a job, right?
Wow.
So it took a little over a year. And it was a very tough time. It was a depressing time as
Okay.
well. And I volunteered first at an internship. It was an unpaid internship, and that was my first unpaid internship actually ever in life.
Yeah.
So here it is. I have this, college degree, and no one's
Uh-oh.
hiring.
So what was that? Because like you said, unpaid internship, right? Kind of
Yes,
tough.
yes,
How did you
yeah,
manage?
yes. Well, I mean, clearly God, because
Yeah.
honestly, in addition to that, my mother had been laid off right before I graduated, so it was like back to back to back. Um, it was just a tough time. And with the unpaid internship, what I did is I negotiated for, my Metro card to
Okay.
be kind of like the payment. So I'm in New York City, born and raised in New York City, and I am a Bronxite, meaning that I grew up in the Bronx, currently reside in the Bronx. So commuting back and forth in New York
Yeah.
City is costly. So I negotiated for that to be paid for. And my supervisor at the time, actually, she understood that this was going to be a bridge opportunity for me. She knew that I was actively looking for paid opportunities. But it was great that she provided kind of like this learning space for me to learn more about the nonprofit just realm and sector. And she was one of my key references once I actually secured paid in employment. So yeah, that's one, Eddie. The second one that comes to mind is actually pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic,
Tell me about it.
yeah, exactly, right. So I was actually going into work, and I was just like, okay, I'm feeling this change. I'm feeling this shift. I don't quite know when it's going to take place, what exactly it's going to look like. And I was trying to plan it out perfectly, right? Like I'm sitting there looking at the pay schedule and everything like that, because I already told you I had the experience of the unpaid, right? So I was trying to line it up, and I heard God very clearly, why not today? So that was, I believe that was January 21st
Yep.
last year. And the why not today was, why don't you move out on faith today? And I went into panic mode. And that was the day that I resigned. So
What?
yeah. I resigned that day. Went into the bathroom stall, full transparency, praying Psalms 23, crying.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Because it was scary, because again, I'm trying to
It
plan
is
it out
scary.
perfectly. And God told me very clearly, why not today? So that was tough, because my team, it wasn't so much about my team, because I worked with a great team, and it was an entrepreneurial team where I was loving what I was doing, loving the people that I was working with. It just had reached a point in the way that I wanted to grow. I was not going to be able to do that within the capacity of the organization at that time. And it was just time. And God knew it was time. And then after my last day, that's when everything shut down. And that's when it started to get, like pandemic. So honestly, only God knew that was going to happen. Which then leads me to the third.
Okay.
During that time, taking a leap, truly a leap of faith. And there was a lot of unknown. There was a lot of fear.
Yes.
This going on in the world at the time, like at the onset of the pandemic. I began to question, Lord, did I hear you correctly? Like,
Did I
like,
make
you
a
sure
mistake?
about this?
Yeah, that's, oh man. I'm glad you mentioned that, because and I would like you to touch more on it,
Hmm.
because people need to understand there is no, sometimes you don't have the answer,
Correct.
and you need to just go by faith.
Absolutely.
Can you touch on that?
Yes. So faith is living, breathing. It is action, right?
Yes.
And it's not logic. So if you as I illustrated, right? Like my name means faith. I am faith. It is where it is the posture and it is what my work is anchored in. And when you are in like we live in a very outcomes based, results based world, right? Where we either want things very quickly, or we are accustomed to getting things whenever it is that we desire them because
Yes.
we can just order them with a click, right?
Yep.
And we probably have resources at our disposal. But when you are moving in faith, you are moving by faith and not by sight. Like everything is not going to be clear to you. God knows the plans, right? But you're not going to have all the answers, and that is uncomfortable for most people, but especially for those who are risk averse, right? Because
Yes. You're right. Yep.
yeah,
I agree.
like a risk averse person wants to make more calculated moves, and that while God is strategic, God's strategy is not. It's beyond our wildest dreams. It's beyond our human capacity. So it's a growth. It is a growth. I'm not going to say that I have arrived, right? God continuously stretches me and pushes me in areas, in many different areas of my life as it pertains to faith.
Yes.
And that is how I move about in my work as a visionary and as someone who I consult God first and foremost, like even before this,
Yes.
right? Before we were
Yes.
even talking to each other, Eddie, like it's like, all right, God, are you needing me to lend my voice on this platform? It's being in relationship with God, and it requires trust.
So we here with Imani Missouri. She was explaining a leap of faith, the process, right?
Yes. Yes,
And you
absolutely.
said that it's a difficult. Would you agree that it's a lonely process,
Mm-mm. I
or
would
like?
say,
Okay, go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
I wouldn't say lonely,
Okay.
um, because I was surrounded by people that supported me.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just that everyone doesn't necessarily get the path that you're on, right?
Yes.
Like when you're moving by faith, you're taking a leap of faith. It's for you. It's
Yes.
primarily for you, and your trust in God, and then
Yes.
it can benefit others, right?
Okay.
Um, so everyone's not going to understand all of the intricacies of it, just as you aren't. But it's not necessarily lonely. It's
Okay.
just that you may everyone's not necessarily going to grasp every
Yes.
single thing
Yeah.
in your walk.
No, I'm glad. Thank you for clarifying. And so now my next question would be: so, what was the most um achievement you're proud of?
There's a couple, but you're saying the most.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll say a recent one.
Yeah.
Recent one is that I co-authored a book,
Hmm.
the X Factor, spiritual
Wow.
spiritual secrets to successful executives and entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And that was another leap of faith. That was huge. I love to read, and I'm a reader. I write as well.
Okay.
I've written blogs, I've written articles, but to dedicate a full chapter in a book,
Yes.
um, and to do it what seemed to be suddenly, right? It's not that
Yeah.
I wasn't planning it, right? It wasn't like a goal to be done within a certain time frame. It's the door of opportunity presented itself,
Okay.
and I prayed about it, and it's a huge accomplishment of mine. And I know there are going to be more books to come.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank
But
you.
I had a guest yesterday, and she was saying she wrote a book in 3 months, and
Yes.
she never intended to even be recognized as a writer, but
Correct.
embracing a calling get her to do what God wanted her to do.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the same thing for you.
Yes.
So so let's go back to your high school. But before your high school, let's talk about your upbringing,
Mhm.
family dynamic. How was it for you?
I mean, I have a very loving family. As I mentioned earlier, from New York, grew up in New York City. Um, it was pretty loving. I mean, in terms of the physical environment,
Yeah.
though, for those that are not familiar, so I am from the South Bronx and still currently reside in the South Bronx. Very like years ago, decades ago.
Yeah.
It was rough. And I recall just kind of like the shift and the revitalization of my neighborhood, from being pretty blighted
Yes.
to then being a space where families were moving in. And where it felt thriving, because again, I recall seeing it when it wasn't much.
Yeah.
It wasn't much. People were moving out. People weren't
Yeah.
trying to move in. And I'll say that I appreciate, though the Bronx gets a whole lot of flack or whatever, I appreciate being from the Bronx and having that experience, because something that I've noticed about just my neighbors, and just the community at large, is that it's a community of resilience. There
Okay.
are hardworking people, working class people in the Bronx, and despite, I would say, naysayers,
Yes.
despite what the optics may appear to be, um, people are able to make it, and not just make it, but also thrive and commit themselves to being, you know, rooted, grounded, and supportive of their fellow community members.
Well said. Well said. So, what was your dream in high school? It's sort of like three-part question. What was your dream
Okay.
in high school? If it's the same, that's great. But what was your dream job in high school,
Hmm.
in college, and now?
Okay.
Some people they have the one, but others have different.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, like high school. Okay. So I went to all girls Catholic high school, and I didn't know anything about the field of psychology until I took this class with a late teacher of mine, Father John. And Father John, he taught, intro to psychology. And I loved him as a teacher, and really, really enjoyed the class. And the things that I was just learning in psychology, in terms of general, child, abnormal, I wanted to explore it more. So I didn't really know exactly what that was going to look like, but I knew that I was intrigued by the field of psychology in high
Okay.
school. So going into college, I knew that that was what I wanted to study.
Okay.
But again, I didn't know exactly what aspect of it. I ended up majoring in social psychology, which is the psychology of, how people interact with each other
Yes.
across groups, right? And I was focusing on, intragroup relations, so
Yep.
within a said group, but then also intergroup across different dynamics, and focused on also like Blackness in Latin America. Um, and at that time, I thought going into college that I was going to get my PhD immediately
Okay.
after, or my PsyD, my doctorate in psychology, and work with people directly, as a psychologist, in a
Okay.
capacity as a psychologist. I quickly learned then that I didn't necessarily have the patience then, to work with people in that capacity.
Yeah.
So things shifted. I did not go to a doctoral program straight out of out of college, even though I was still exploring it. But then I started to, have the desire to want more workforce experience before
Yeah.
I went to graduate school. And then, as I mentioned before, the recession happened, and that shook things up a bit. So where I'm at right now, which is very interesting, right? Like, then I didn't feel like I had the patience.
Yeah.
And now, as I'm working with clients, now granted, I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but coaching professionals in the areas of personal development, career, their executive leadership.
Yep.
It's still getting at the very thing that I wanted to do, it's just in a different capacity. And in terms of the aspect of racial identity, being able to work as a part of this team in conjunction with like Christians and churches across
Okay.
the country to address systemic racism and work towards racial equity. Again, I believe that I am where I am supposed to be right now. And I am living out that purpose right now.
Wow.
And I'm truly, truly trusting God in the process. But I'm really, really at a great point right now.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So one thing, what do you think people most misunderstand about you?
I think this is a misunderstanding, not just about me, but just about God.
Okay.
So I present as, I had a professor that told me and I kind of paid tribute to it in the chapter in the book, Roaring Diplomat. He gave me feedback of how I was engaging with a client, a pro bono client.
Okay.
And he said that I was so diplomatic. And it was not really it was like a compliment, but not really. Like, he wanted me to be more forceful. Okay. And I believe a misunderstanding about me, when people don't really know me too well, is they may just see or when they hear, like faith or Christianity or anything of the like, that it's just about love, right? That it's not about justice and it's not about equity. And I drive equity in my work. I desire to see equitable leadership. So that means Black and Brown leaders, and also, closing the wealth gap in this country and beyond. And again, when people probably hear faith, they probably just think about the niceties of faith, but they really don't know the inner workings of faith. And they also, that's why I said, like, a perception of me as the one who's activating, who's the vessel doing this work, is that there's also a justice and an equity component. It's not just love, it's out of love, right? Yeah. And with love, it's also work. Like, love is an action word. It's not just, still and complacent. Yes. It requires work. So misunderstanding is, oh, well, this seems like nice work. Yes, it is nice work. It's also work. Like, it is work. Coaching people towards that place where they are, feeling more fulfilled is work. Driving equity is work. It's justice.
Yep, you're right. And so I can switch to that. So what's the best compliment you ever gotten?
I mean, there's been a number of things, and I would say the one that I'm recalling right now. Okay. I had a former colleague who, and this is when I was walking in purpose. Again, just wasn't fully clear on what that was going to look like. So a former colleague was dealing with issues in her department. So she would come to me with matters that were going on with her manager, and also some of her teammates. And again, I was already moving in the coach realm, right? Not necessarily coaching her professionally,
Okay.
like client to coach, yet it was colleague, but I was coaching her. And she said to me, Imani, do people report to you? And I said, no, like that's not, like really like the structure here. And she said, I would love it if you were my manager.
Wow.
And I think that more managers need to be like you. And that was a huge, huge compliment, because one, this colleague was older than me.
Yeah.
The colleague, I'll be transparent, was also a white woman.
Okay.
With, again, years of experience in the workforce. Yet when she was coming to me because of things that she was dealing with in her department, she was really, it piqued her inquiry and inquisition of, are people reporting to you? Because more people need to report to you. Like you need to be leading more people and managing more people. Yeah.
I think that's a great compliment.
Yes.
But how did that fuel your desire to stay on that path as embracing your calling?
Yeah. It was, first of all, it was very affirming, right? Because I was not expecting that. I was just very focused on her and her managing that environment that she was in. While even now, I don't have anyone directly reporting to me, it's encouraging to me that as I grow in business and as I grow in leadership, that there will be the desire is that it's not just going to be solopreneurship, but there is going to be a team that's a part of this greater work. So being able to hear that from a colleague, and I've heard it from other people that I've kind of like indirectly managed as well. It just gives me hope for once the work is scaled.
So and like I said, I'm very happy to have you in this podcast today. Thank you, Imani Missouri, to accept our invitation. But can you tell us what was the process for you to go with Faith Forward?
Mm-hmm.
Studying it, or was it?
Yes. So it actually came about when I was working in a toxic work environment. So very similar to the colleague that I was mentioning. I was in that position and I was questioning my own path in terms of professionally, like, did I make the right decision? Like what's going on? Who am I being expected to be someone else in this moment? If I, kind of like put on a different air, is that going to change the environment? And actually what came of that is that I sought out assistance. I sought out coaching for myself. And it was through that coaching that it was shared with me, what you have been doing for others is exactly like what you are now seeking. And you are a coach. You're going to be a coach. And I was like, no, like I just need help with whatever it is that I have going on.
Yeah.
So I was a bit in denial, right? Again, I didn't know that it was. I didn't know that it was a part of the path for me to be in a role where I'm leading and I'm guiding people. And it was also a time where I grew more spiritually. I began to see, okay, you were not named Imani by accident.
Wow.
And while I sought out support, honestly, the greatest support was me growing closer with God. So, of course, when God gave me the instruction, and I'm the first one in my family, to my knowledge, to even start a business, right?
Wow.
That was completely different for me because I'm like, wait a second, I'm working and you're telling me that I'm going to start a business. Like, what is this? And God gave me the name very clearly, Faith Forward LLC.
Wow. So looking at your website now, right now, and a beautiful website. So can you tell us about the? I know you just told us about how you started everything. And talk about what you do on a daily basis. Are you reaching to people?
Sure.
It looks like.
Yeah. So that photo actually that you're sharing was taken in the area where I grew up for the majority of my life. So that is actually in the Bronx.
Wow.
And it's on the High Bridge. And the majority of my life, I grew up in the High Bridge section of the Bronx. So that picture, this is the first time that I'm actually sharing this publicly, Eddie. That picture is very, very symbolic. It is a bridge. It is a walkway between the Bronx and Manhattan over a body of water. And you can see that there's a strong tower behind me.
Yeah, I can see.
Yes, very, very purposeful.
Yeah.
Very, very purposeful. So as I shared, my work is anchored in faith. My clients may or may not I would say identify as Christian. Actually, I have clients that aren't Christian.
Okay.
Yet they are impassioned by the heart of the work, right? Like they are already in a space where they are doing purpose-driven work.
Okay.
They are looking for someone who understands and overstands that work. And my background in working in a nonprofit, community development, education, and then the entrepreneurial space is what folks are drawn to. So on the coaching side, work with professionals one-on-one, but then also in group settings in the areas, that come up with them in the workplace. So whether there's conflict in the workplace, whether they're thinking about transitioning in their career and they're a little unclear about what that next is. Those are some of the areas on the consulting side. As I shared, it is around racial equity, leadership development, community engagement. So not only just doing a strategy just for the business, but how is it going to, benefit the community at large.
Wow. Well said. So, but can you tell us about like the composition of your team?
Yeah, the composition of the team is God is the CEO of everything. And I am the principal owner.
Okay.
That, so currently it is me and God activating this work and the prayer. And I believe I will be blessed in this area is to actually have a team within the next 2 to 5 years.
Wow.
So this is interesting. I would say I grew up with so my maternal grandmother and her husband, my grandfather. We had 2 dogs that then mated, and then they had a whole litter of puppies. So honestly, my fondest memories were growing up with the dogs.
Okay.
Like when the litter was born, it's like we were growing up together.
Yeah.
And 2 of the puppies from that litter, like they were with me and with the family until I was in like halfway through high school.
Okay.
And it also at that time, I was still kind of considering before I took that psychology class.
Okay.
I was considering being a veterinarian.
Okay.
Yeah. So because of my, my upbringing with dogs, and just kind of like that whole family element, I was a fan of Animal Planet, National Geographic. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. And those were some of the fondest memories because I was raised as the only child, yet, I had the company of my dogs and my family.
But let's talk about this quote right there, where you're talking about faith and purpose. You can read it. Knowing oneself and your purpose further guides you. Affirmation.
Yes.
Can you
So,
expand on that?
sure. So knowing oneself and your purpose further guides your affirmations. That is, I'm pretty sure that, there are a number of, coaches who would agree. For me, as I shared, I had to first know who I was, right?
Okay.
Like, who is it that God was calling me to be? While I knew the meaning of my name, I didn't really know what faith looked like. And I also did not know that God was also a part of all facets
Yeah.
of my life. So truly knowing who you are, knowing why you're here, your purpose, it further guides the things that you desire in your life. It further guides the rooms that you are a part of, the conversations that you are a part of, the work that you engage in. And I actually have this right next to me, and I just started to read this about a month and a half ago, actually. So Rick Warren's sorry, Purpose Driven Life
Okay.
is a great book. And no, I didn't pull that quote from him, but it's a very informative book on, it says, what on earth am I here for? So when you know what that purpose is, and it requires seeking God first, right? To get that
Yes.
clarity each and every step of the way. Then it further guides your work. It further guides, like I said, the conversations, the relationships, networks, and so on and so forth that you're a part of.
Wow. So on that, so what are the three books you will recommend our audience, and why?
So definitely The Purpose Driven Life, definitely by Rick Warren. I I say that because I say it as a definite because there are a number of folks that may be desiring to know what their next is, or even a better grasp on what their present is. And you can try, and I'm going to say try,
Yeah.
you can try to come to that clarity by taking
Every.
assessments. And I'm not saying that
Okay.
assessments don't give you some insight. But what really is going to give you that clarity is growing in that relationship with God and truly um, seeking God on that on your path. The second book that I would recommend, I actually read this as I was in the beginning stages of when I was kind of like formulating the chapter in the book. It is The Woman God Created You to Be by
Wow.
Kimberla Lawson.
Yes. Yep.
And Kimberla, New York Times bestselling author, Christian author, writer, and this book really documents kind of like her journey
Okay.
and her work of finding success, faith, and personally and professionally. Great book. Don't want to give any spoilers, but amazing story. And then the third that I would recommend, just because of the work that I have worked through and walked through professionally,
Yeah.
but also have supported clients in, is Securing a Seat at the Table by Minda Harts.
Ooh.
Um,
Wow.
and it is written with the woman of color in mind.
Okay.
And I think that it's just very important. I know that there's been a lot of talk about that. There's also been a lot of initiatives that people have put forth because of last year, but there have been people who have been driving this work for years. But yes, I would say the memo, Securing a Seat at the Table.
Wow. Thank you. So we're gonna go to hot topic now.
Okay.
So hot topic, it's So it's a segment. So we like this segment where we're gonna talk about subject people or your client. They don't have a chance to ask you,
Okay.
and they're gonna hear
Okay.
it now. So hot topic. So what do you think? Do being a coach? Do you ever have a chance where people asking you to do everything for them? But you being the coach, but
Yeah. So
they
I,
expect you to do everything.
it's that's a good question. As a coach, just in terms of by training, by trade, it is to ask those questions because people actually have the answer, right? And sometimes clients don't feel that they have the answer
Yeah,
because they may be very much they may be feeling the emotion of whatever that experience may be, whether it's a toxic work environment, as I mentioned, some clients operate in, or trying to navigate, or it's like they're next in their career.
yeah,
It may feel like a fog, right? So they may desire that you are going to just hand them an answer, but it's not my job
yeah.
and shouldn't be any coach's job to hand, the client the answer. It is to guide them towards answers that are suitable for them to make that next step.
All right. So what would you say is the characteristic of a good coach?
One, an active listener. I have heard that from my clients over and over. They've shared how they have learned as leaders and managers how to listen just by me listening to them.
Okay.
So, definitely someone who is an active listener. I would also say someone who is a continuous learner, right?
Okay.
You have to be invested in learning and growing yourself personally and professionally. And then a third thing, because I I can definitely give you a number, but I'll give you three. The third thing is really asking those powerful questions, right? Because people may be feeling stuck. I've had my moments as well where coaching has definitely helped me, and being able to ask those questions that are just going to kind of through listening, right? That will unlock, and open up a door of insight for a person to take that next step.
So what would be an advice you give for somebody who want to be a coach?
Hmm. Well, one, I would say talk to other coaches,
Okay.
right? And I say talk to other coaches because get a sense of what's out there.
Yeah.
There are thousands upon thousands of coaches just in North America alone,
Yeah.
right? And there are also a number of folks who may be coaching, but they're not necessarily accredited or, like a credentialed coach. So speaking to others to better understand like what was their path
Yeah.
and, what has been kind of like key milestones in their journey, and key learns, and then also figuring out, well, who are you called to coach and why? Because I have found that there are a number of coaches that are aiming to coach the same way that they have saw someone else, like they're aiming to replicate someone else's, strategy, or someone else's, impact and influence. And it is very, very important that you know who you are serving and why.
And can you tell us who is not a good coach? What?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, someone who going back to like when I was in college, right? If you're not patient, this is not the space for you. This is not the space for you. Coaching requires patience. So someone who's impatient, or I would say wants a quick fix, this is not it. When you are working with people and or organizations that also have people in order to function, right?
Yes.
It requires patience, and it requires, just kind of like a steadiness in the work that's not going to be as rapid fire as maybe some other spaces. Like Eddie, you even mentioned kind of like working with locks, right? Like being a locksmith. There is a stylistic and a training in which how to approach, like making that change. But when people are desiring that change, they want it quick.
Yes.
But there's there's training and there's practice. So someone who does not have the patience, this is not this is not for you. And if you want quick results.
I think, and it's a question because I'm trying to learn. I think there's I see a surge of coaching. Or can you identify the good ones?
You can identify the good ones, or I will say it depends on what you're looking for, right? So when I was actually looking for coaches professionally, right?
Yeah.
I was looking for those that represented my values, right? Or those that kind of like modeled me personally and professionally. So I would say that's the basis of, are you even seeing or perceiving a connection or some type of modeling with this person?
Yeah.
Are they walking their talk, or are they just talking?
Okay.
And in addition to that, there are clients who are looking for those credentials, right? They want to know, have you gone through a credentialed program? Are you certified to coach? And not, again, it is not saying that people who aren't certified can't coach. I'm just saying that may be a criteria for folks. So that's something that you can find out. For example, I'm credentialed with the International Coaching Federation, right? Like ICF. You can look on ICF's website and find out who are the coaches, what area, what location. So yes.
Wow, that was great. Thank you for answering this question. So let's switch to something fun. What are the 3 movies you can recommend our audience?
Okay.
And why?
3 movies. Okay. So, oh wow. I mean, I have. All right. So, surprisingly, I'm gonna go with an animated movie. I'm gonna go with.
I love animated movies.
I'm going to go with Vivo. And one, I'm not a huge fan of like cartoons and animation, but when I come across a good one, I'm going to recommend it. So Vivo, it's on Netflix. Highly recommend. It's Latin American centered. Starts off in Cuba, then transitions into Miami, and there's a lot of music, vibrancy, love, relationship. I don't want to give spoiler alerts, but Vivo, highly recommend, and so much so that I've downloaded the soundtrack. I will listen to the songs.
You're truly a fan of that movie.
Truly a fan. Downloaded the soundtrack. Will listen to the songs to give me a boost, keep me motivated and work.
Okay.
So yes, starting off with Vivo. Another movie, Just Mercy.
Okay.
Which is based on Brian Stevenson's journey as a lawyer, and working to defend and civil rights again, no spoiler alerts. There's also the book Just Mercy. The movie is very, very powerful. And again, from the aspect of justice that I talked about earlier, that people misconstrue that, faith is just, the love aspect of it, but it is work, and it's also justice and equity involved. And then third movie, I'm gonna go with The Shack.
Which one?
The Shack.
Okay.
SHACK.
Okay.
That is a very spiritual, movie that, again, you would not expect. It's one that I can't give too much away, but will recommend. And I see the actress in my mind right now. Oh my goodness. Do you mind if I pull this up, Eddie? Because I want to.
Let's see.
I see her right now, but I'm like, okay, yes, Octavia Spencer. Thank you. So Octavia Spencer is a key, component of the.
Oh yeah, I think she's good.
Yes.
No, that's great. So 3 movies. So
Vivo, Just Mercy, and The Shack.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So, any question you wish I asked you today?
Question I wish you asked. Maybe what keeps me inspired.
Oh, so what keeps you inspired, Imani?
What keeps me inspired, honestly, is when I witness breakthroughs with the clients that I'm working with. Okay. What keeps me inspired is also, like with my work with Faith and Prejudice, being able to see that there is a desire through the heart of the church. So not just like the institution of the church, but through the heart of the church, of wanting to really right the wrongs of racial inequity and racial injustice in this country. So I'm inspired by the hearts of people, and I'm inspired by witnessing breakthroughs that happen in the lives of my clients.
Wow, well said, and thank you for sharing this. So if you had a chance to gather 5 people who influence your life, who they will be?
Okay. So my maternal grandmother, late maternal grandmother, her and I are about the same height, or maybe she was a little shorter than me. So you can't tell right now because I'm seated. But a little lady, but very, very powerful. And I just carry her with me. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to witness and have a great foundation of faith and relationship with God by witnessing my grandmother, my maternal grandmother.
Okay.
Also, I would say influence. I would say ancestors that I don't even know by name, right? Like people who have braved through very testing, tumultuous situations, yet made it through so that I'm here today.
Okay.
I would have to say one of my mentees.
Okay.
Her name is Atsidi. To just see the younger generation desiring more from their work, whether it's in the private sector or, public sector, social impact sector, they desire more. They desire more purpose in their work. And I am continuously, inspired by her. And she helps, drive me forward because I know that there's a generation that's looking at us. Okay, two more. My mother, obviously. I have to say my mother, and I mean, she's a great woman and huge supporter and encourager of mine. And then I'll say the women that were featured on my podcast. So I wrapped up my podcast last year. Or was it earlier this year? I think it was earlier this year. Oh my goodness. It is like the years, right, Eddie? It's just like sorry. So it was actually this year. The women that were featured on my podcast. So it was 40 women of color in the nonprofit sector. And they all range in just like particular like industry expertise, experience, and honestly, to journey through that with them. And the vast majority of them did not know me from a hole in the wall.
Wow.
I'm just influenced by their by their tenacity,
Okay.
their drive, and also the impact that they're making.
Wow. Wait, that was great. That was good. So, would you like to see in that podcast? But you'll be the one inviting them. A friend of yours or somebody you think would be great.
Who would I be interested in seeing on a podcast?
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, my grandmother. My grandmother so not my late grandmother, but my grandmother who is alive and well.
Okay.
I think would be very, very comical. So I dedicated the chapter in the book to her as well. Our relationship is kind of like the great debaters.
Okay.
She's a feisty one. So my grandmother is from the Caribbean. She's from Antigua. So we, we can go back and forth. And I love her. But she's a feisty one. So I would love to see her.
So are you gonna make it happen? Let me know.
I would say this. She thinks every recording is you're posting it on Facebook. She at least knows that. She does not have a Facebook account, but so I don't know.
All right, so I will be glad if you try. But
Yes.
Antigua, I'm trying to go to Antigua. So I'm trying to go to Aruba. So
Okay.
I'm from Haiti. I'm Asian. So I like the Caribbean.
Yes.
And I want to visit all I
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
All like countries I can, and I know they're all beautiful.
Yes, they are.
So you ever been there?
Yes, I have been.
You like it?
Yeah.
Favorite food over there?
Oh gosh. I know this is gonna sound real basic. It really, really is.
Yeah.
It's well, actually, it's gonna have to be my grandmother's cooking. So her fried dumplings and her sawfish is yeah, it is quite it's quite delicious. So yeah, I would have to go to my grandmother's kitchen for that. And she knows that that's like a request that I have when I do see her.
Yeah.
She hasn't seen me in a couple of weeks, but you reminded me that I need to call her, and we're probably going to have a feisty exchange. When we speak.
So definitely, Imani Missouri, you did great, and we appreciate you came in today in our podcast. This is our episode with Divine Purpose Podcast. Last word for you.
Wow. Last word. So one, I would definitely encourage those who are, looking to learn more about me, definitely visit the website, www.coachfaithforward.com. And truly take that time, especially as, another year is approaching, and really stilling yourself if you're at this kind of crossroads to really seek God for what it is that you're called here to do, and why. And it's a process. It is a process. There are no quick fixes. I mean, God definitely performs miracles, right? God definitely can do a suddenly. It's just that your posture should be one of humility and patience, and being still for those things to be revealed to you.
Wow, well said, well said. Appreciate it. This is Imani Missouri. She did a great job today. She helped us
Thank you, buddy.
understanding her purpose. She helped us understanding what it means to be a good coach, and we learned a lot from her. This is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. Thank you for being with us, and thank you, Imani. Thank you
Thank
for taking
you.
the time. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.